Just a quick disclaimer, there will be spoilers throughout this video as I'm explaining the plot and deaths of major and minor characters. I do recommend to watch the movie before watching this video. Thank you. Bad Boys, made in 1995, is a feature-length movie directed by Michael Bay with a running time of an hour and 59 minutes of the action genre. This is a macro film analysis by Matthew Cronk. So towards the beginning of the movie, in the opening 3 minutes, we're introduced to the main character, Mike Lowry. He is mainly a rich playboy, driving through the road, and he owns a very nice car, which is a Porsche 911. Normally driving at fast speeds with lots of close-ups around Miami. We are introduced to his best friend in the Miami Police Department, Marcus Burnett, which is established through the dialogue. We learn that he has a wife and he's having some issues at home with the rules and how everything's going around, and that clearly his character is clearly quite clumsy and messy, as he clearly drops chips and food to his car, which makes Mike not very happy. While arguing, as Mike stops the car, a gang stops behind them and tries to steal the car. This scene tells an important part of the story about Mike's personality, as we tell he's clearly single, as they use a female woman as a bait to try and distract Mike, to try and take them out of the car. Through this scene, we are shown that Mike is very cocky, but still very conserved, while under pressure, as they have guns as a code. On the other hand, Marcus is still very nervous and hyperactive, so he tries to compare himself to Mike, which obviously he cannot. Some of the generic codes and conventions in action movies are clearly defined hero, which is very rarely a female, a clearly defined villain, including violence, weapons used, serious injury or death of major or minor characters, which they use blood to convey, destruction of cities like fires, explosions and floods, exceed fighting, physical feats like stunts performed by characters, rescuing of victims, and frantic chases with cars or on foot. The first use of conventions, which happens 5 minutes into the movie. The first kill is made by Fouchette, which is the main villain. He shoots a fake security guard, which was meant to distract other people. So he uses a code, which is the gun and blood, to connote that he is dead on his blue shirt. He gets launched out the doors while the car is speeding up. This kill is later supported by many police cars showing up after he calls a fake 911 to distract them, while part of his gang robbed the police department of a $100 million career bust of heroin, which Mike and Marcus recently did. This will dramatically affect, I guess, the narrative of the movie, and will affect the actions that they take to save other people. Some of the codes, conventions used throughout the film is hand-to-hand combat between heroes and villains, clearly shown by the images here, with Mike fighting the gang at the beginning of the movie. And there's obviously death at the hand of the villains, and obviously of the villains. Obviously sub-characters, main characters, and of supporting characters like Max, who helps them out with the police case. In the film, we see escape attempts from the villains, closely evading getting shot. This is obviously stunts, climbing on roofs, and intense chase scenes. This all happens within 28 minutes of the movie. There is a car chase towards the end, chasing Fouchette at the point where he gets killed and shot. A part where a sub-character that helps them figure out the plot escapes on the roof, as I explained in the beginning. There's a stunt where they climb across the roof in tiles and heels, which takes a lot of skill, and she makes a stunt to escape to the floor and jumps into a pool. The use of stereotypical characters in Bad Boys. Mike Lowry, Black African, very confident and masculine. This is shown through his obsessive use of swear words and manly posture. His ability to stay calm in stressful situations is amazing. While he can be a bit cocky at some points in the movie, he can also be intimidating when he wants something very badly, which is obviously motivated by the kidnapping of Julie and threatening his life. The second character is Marcus Burnett. He is black and also African. He's very headstrong, careful, and loyal. He loves his family and his partner like a brother, which is obviously Mike Lowry. It's just that he is often too grumpy to sometimes show it, as he always wants to be shown as a very manly man. There is Fouchette, a violent and dangerous man with a large temper, and he has a big gang, lots of power and control over the city. He's the mastermind behind the police heist and that stole $100 million career bust of heroin, and obviously behind Julie's kidnapping, which leads to his death, all while keeping the money for himself. He is a very smart criminal. There is Maxine Logan. She is black and African, which is a very similar thing about this movie. Even though his story is cut short about 16 minutes into the movie, she plays a very important role. She helps the group find the stolen heroin. She is very strong and confident. This is a subversion of a character. She is a stripper and she helps out Mike in cases, but however she dies in the last scene with Fouchette. Another subversion is Julie Mott. She is white, American, but she is strong and confident, however she can be sometimes scared, as she is kidnapped as bait towards the end of the movie. She has kept off anger about certain things, so whenever she's angry, like in this scene here, where she she thinks Marcus Burnett is pretending to be Mike, and she thinks that he's a very scary person. So she can be hostile when Marcus is in her apartment, and she can be curious as she gets more involved in the case, as in the bottom left photo. So she gets kidnapped. The sound and music tracks. So in terms of the music, in the sense of the soundtrack, it was specifically made for a movie, and this is called a film score. The song was released in March 21st, 1995 through Sony Music, and the song mostly uses guitar and the piano. Some of the non-diegetic sounds were added in post. This makes punches, shattering of glass, gunshots, and rattling of handcuffs, which is mostly used in the movie to make sure Julie is staying in protective custody. In terms of conversations, the music tone is typically turned a lot lower, and there's very little sound added in post, so you can really feel the tension build up in the room and the awkwardness. It helps you hear specific dialogue that will be important to the narrative, especially in conversation between Marcus and Teresa, which is Marcus's wife, as she finds a girl in his room which she thinks he's cheating on her with. The moments of stress and action is where the pace is sped up, and it allows the audience to focus on the fighting, and as there is no dialogue, so there's no conflict between everyone else. However, there was a confrontation between the villain and the hero. There was a brief moment of tension where the pace of the music is slowed down dramatically, and the tone is darkened to show that something bad will happen next. Whenever the villain's on screen, the tone of the music is turned very scary and menacing, which is mixed with a large drum and bass. Now, in terms of the lighting for the villains, one thing I noticed, which is key, is that they tend to use far-side lighting, which is a term in Hollywood that affects the sight, so they use 80% of their face is either covered in shadow or sun. And they tend to also use low-key lighting for the villains, as it gives a sense of mystery and untrustworthiness. And it also hides their eyes to a point where you can't tell what emotion they have. This can change the atmosphere to be quite tense and awkward. Whereas in terms of the heroes, they use lots of high-key lighting, which is very positive, and it gives as it bounces off the walls more, it allows you to trust them more, and it allows you to tell that you know that they're the good guys and they're going to save the movie. In the environment around them, there's a lot more open windows, so you can tell there's more light in the room. As in the background, there's lots of tall blinking lights, so it's quite positive. The colours used in these scenes are quite bright and colourful, so they use blue for using like trustworthiness, intelligence, as they are the police, and they also use orange, which is quite refreshing, happy and pleasing. they're always as I said, they're always in a bright source of light, so they can be trusted. In terms of props character theory, there is the hero. In this movie, there are two heroes, Marcus Burnett and Mike Lowry. They are cops that are fighting back to get the career bust of heroin. They're clearly motivated by saving Julie, who is kidnapped, and obviously, and also trying to keep their job. As in the movie, the boss suggests that if they don't get the money back within 5 days, they will shut down the precinct. They are always controlled by pride and complete job completion, no matter the consequences. It means they're very committed. There's the villain, which is Fouchette. He has no second name, as this gives a sense of mystery for the character, and obviously a single name is very menacing. He is smart, as he is the mastermind behind the kidnapping of Julie and the bank and the heist from the police department. He tends to sell the heroin that he stole from the police, but there is the false hero. The false hero in this movie is Francine, which is the assistant in the police department. She ends up being, towards the end of the movie, she is revealed to be the ex-girlfriend of the man that helps Fouchette to steal the heroin. So she gives information about them and how to get into the police department and how to steal the heroin. There's the helper. The helper is the character that assists the hero in the quest of the movie. There's two helpers, Francine and Julie Mott. Even though Francine's the false hero, she does end up redeeming herself by giving information of the phone number of the police. This ends up leading to the capture and obviously killing of Fouchette. So there's Julie Mott. She is the second helper. She helps the hero in the quest with info about the murder of Maxine, as she was the key witness to the room, as obviously she was with Maxine when she was killed. Now, in terms of the narrative used in the movie, they use a linear narrative, which can be linked in with Robert McKee's 3-act formula. Act 1 consists of the setup. The main characters are introduced and followed by a point of conflict or initiating incident. Mike Lowry is introduced as a single, rich playboy that cares a lot for his cars and what happens to him. Marcus is shown to be a messy character. This is mostly a distraction for a robbery in the police department of a $100 million bust, which Mike and Marcus recently had. Assuming this was an inside job, Mike reached out to Maxine, who helps out Mike in these sort of similar situations, and what she does is she looks up for parties that can attract any sort of attention for like gang people. In his interest, she attracts a party and she goes with Julie Mott. As obviously assumed, there was the coke that they stole from the police department there, but however, Maxine is shot to death by Fouchette. But Julie manages to escape and calls up the PD, calling for Mike Lowry. However, he's out of town or unavailable, so Marcus has to impersonate him. While this manages to kick off a couple things. This managed to kick off her becoming a key witness, so they have to keep her under police protection or under Mike and Marcus's protection, while they have to keep the facade of who is who. This initiates where they have to save her and keep her from Fouchette, as he wants to kill her, as she is a key witness in his crime. In Act 2, there is the conflict. In the movie, the protagonist or the main character encounters complications and barriers on the hero's journey. In the second act, the action heats up. There is more attempts on their lives, but they get closer to catching Fouchette. This is all because of the help of Julie Mott and the planet they attempt to find. They manage to find an asylum for her at Mike's apartment. However, he does not agree with this, as we seem to find out that they have dogs and they end up peeing on his carpet, which costs lots of money, and obviously he has an argument with Mike, which is not very good. This means that he has to get comfortable with Marcus's life, so he ends up taking on to his wife. They become good friends and end up bonding with his kids. They end up finding the location of one of the gang members, but they try to find him. However, in the casino, they end up confronting Fouchette and his gang. This then becomes a fast-paced scene with cars and trucks and explosives. So they come up with a plan to explode the car behind them. This becomes successful, so they end up escaping. However, Mike does not agree with this, as he ends up going off on Julie, arguing her, saying that she should leave this to the pros. And then they end up going back to each other's houses. Mike ends up becoming really good friends with Julie, and they end up calling up Marcus. While Marcus, he's a married man, she tries to sleep with him, but he sticks with his marriage and does not. But then this makes her suspicious of him. So they end up calling them, and however, with the key dialogue in the scene that they end up with, this is he's cheating on her. However, he is clearly wrong, as they've been best friends for a long time, and he would never do that to his best friend. They end up interrogating one of the gang members, and they get a name. In Act 3, this is called the resolution. The transition from the second to third act is known as the climax. This is the point of the match. If it all goes well, Hollywood, the protagonist claims the victory and walks into the sunset, which is metaphorical, and becomes a stronger and better person. The final act is very interesting because there ends up being no relationships involved, but you can sort of tell that Marcus and his wife Teresa end up becoming back together again. The final act, when the movie ends, this action is heightened very high at this point. They're motivated, they have many things to get back. They end up getting a name, however, the big boss asks them to drop the case because they've gone too far, so they're giving it to another gang. But however, the captain disagrees with this, and he says, "I can't just leave this case unsolved." So they end up saying, "Do whatever you need to do and get this done." So the hacker, so they can leak the name on the information. However, this then reveals that that they end up finding out that one of the people in the police department is Francine. She was the leak of the information that managed to find they gave the gang the information leak for where the heroin is found. However, she redeems herself, as I said earlier in one of the PowerPoints, that she gives them the number. This then leads to them finding the location of the dealer. However, Fouchette ends up killing the dealer who wants to buy the heroin from him, so he betrays him. This is where the final scene happens with the action. They end up killing all the other gang members. How Fouchette escapes with an injured Marcus and Mike. They chase him in Mike's car, and this is where Fouchette ends up getting killed. However, Fouchette ends up trying to take Marcus's life, but Mike has a fast reaction time, so he kills him. The movie ends in quite a happy way because they end up technically walking to a sunset, but you never know. But because of this quite high-key orange lighting, you can tell there's possibly a sunset with this light background. You can sort of tell that they're going to heal up and live happy together, but they sort of give it off a comedic ending. They end up using handcuffs, and Marcus, after being asked what's next, Marcus says there is no next, and they end up handcuffing him together as a joke, and they don't give him the key, so that they sort of make it a happy ending. This has been the microanalysis. Thank you for watching.